to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, September 25th, 2023. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Strawn?
Here.
Councilmember Etten?
Here.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Here.
Councilmember Groff?
Here.
Mayor Roth?
Here. And with us at the dais, we also have our City Attorney, Rachel Tierney, who's on my right at the end, and City Manager Pat Trudgeon on my left at the other end of the dais. We have a number of staff, departments, heads, and special guests who will be participating in the meeting as various items come forward, so we'll make those introductions at that time. We would ask you if you have a cell phone to make sure and silence it so it doesn't disrupt the meeting. With that, and I should check, do we have any online participants this evening?
Nobody signed up previously, and no. did not.
No, all right, so no need to provide instructions for the online participants. I would note for members of the public, there is a copy or extra copies of the agenda on the back table underneath the clock. There's also information about how to attend a council meeting, if that's helpful. And then a full set of all the meeting materials is also available for the public, so that if there's anything you have questions about, you can access that as the evening goes on. With that, then we'll ask folks to stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next on our agenda then is approval of the agenda, and I'll just check, as I always do, first with staff to see, Mr. Trudgeon, are there any changes from a staff perspective this evening?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
All right, from a council perspective, any council members wish to change anything on the agenda or have an item removed from the consent for separate consideration? Councilmember Hatton.
Mayor, I'd like to pull item G, the approval of street name change policy, please.
Remove that from consent for
Yes.
separate consideration. All right, we'll move that to section 6 of the agenda then, assuming that passes with the motion. I will also check with members of the public if anybody is here on an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda at the bottom of the first page, items 10A through now F, and wishes to make a comment or ask a question about one of those items. This would be the time to let us know, and we can take up that item earlier in the meeting. Otherwise, those items will be taken up as a single motion later in the meeting with limited opportunity for public input. But we do always want to check with folks if you are here for an item in section 10, items 10A through, as it stands, F. This would be the time to let us know once again so that you can let me know, and we'll make sure and take that item up earlier for you this evening. Is anyone here for an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda? All right, doesn't appear to be the case. So we've got the one item, 10G, requested to be removed from consent for separate consideration. Is there a motion to approve the agenda with that change?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve the agenda with that change to item 10G. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for tonight. Next on tonight's agenda, we have an opportunity for general public comment. We do provide an opportunity as agenda items come up for public comment or questions from members of the public, but we also do want to provide an opportunity at the start of each meeting for general comment from members of the public about either issues related to city business that aren't on tonight's agenda or items of interest to people in the community, once again, that are not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to an item not on tonight's agenda? All right, feel free to have a seat at the table in front of one of the microphones. We do have a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which is a lot of time for most people, and I try to enforce that gently. We would ask that you state your name and address or street for the record at the beginning of your comments. Direct comments or questions to the City Council. We may not be able to respond right away this evening, but certainly if there's an inquiry that needs response, we will direct staff to follow up. With that, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Art Igia, and I'm going to pull up my phone here just because it was email, just miscommunication. I did speak with, and I'm from Stillwater, by the way. Okay. I had been in conversations with Brian Lloyd, and this is in regards to the sober housing. I understand that it was brought up either last month or the month before. The last email I got from Mr. Lloyd was from August 29th, said that at the September 25th meeting, that would be the target for the adoption of the ordinance. When I got here, that wasn't the case, but that's okay. I'm just here to kind of refresh a little bit of that conversation. I did send extra documents to Mr. Lloyd, and I currently run 4 sober houses, and they're very much needed in the community. And we are looking at purchasing a house here in Roseville to turn it into a sober house. And I just wanted to make sure that this, I guess, hopefully gets on maybe the next week's agenda, or I'm sorry, next month's agenda. As I said, I did send more documentation for this. So the city council is aware, the ADA and FHA protect the sober community class, people suffering from addiction, and that is a covered class in the ADA and FHA. And technically, we don't need to ask for a license for a sober home. So I just want to make sure that that's looked at ahead of time, because a lot of cities usually want you to pull a like a rental permit, but it's not rent. So I just need to make sure you guys understand that the ADA and the FHA protect these kind of homes. And so I would prefer to come into the city of Roseville doing things the right way. I guess if it's required to fill out a permit, happy to do it that way. The other way to do it is to just buy a house and start putting people in there for sobriety, which is not the way I would like to proceed on something like this. Because if we did, the ADA and the FHA would protect that house and the class of people that are in it. But I'm not looking to start off on the wrong foot with any city. And Brian has actually been very, very helpful in trying to push this, because he thinks it's a good resource for the city to have. At least just from the conversations that we've had, he thinks he's been a good catalyst to get this going. So I'm just hoping that at the next, one of the misses behind me said at the end of October, but are there 2 meetings throughout the month, or how does this work?
So there's multiple meetings, typically each month, at least 2, most months, and sometimes 3. And I should clarify too, that what is before the city council, as I understand it, that was back before us at our previous council discussion, was what's called a reasonable accommodation ordinance, which basically structures things to be a staff decision as far as, anything regarding approvals. And then if there's a disapproval, then it would be appealable to the city council at that point. So what's before this, we don't have that process in our ordinance right now. So what has been recommended by our attorney is to put that in place, so we have a staff process to hopefully easily approve this type of use in line with ADA requirements, et cetera. But we need to put that process in place, so that's really what the council will be taking up. I don't believe the council will be looking at individual cases unless there happens to be an appeal of a staff decision.
Okay, that sounds good. I just,
And I wish I could tell you which meeting it will be, but keep in touch with staff.
It is scheduled for October 23rd.
23rd.
okay.
We will be in touch if that does change, to make sure that you're well.
Okay, yeah, I'll make sure that I talk with Mr. Lloyd by then as well. I did also forward more documentation to him as to why it's necessary to have, some cities say, like White Bear Lake doesn't want more than 6, but from my understanding there, somebody's going to file something in federal court in response to the White Bear Lake decision that only allowed up to 6. However, it is important to know that in the ADA and FHA, the people that live in a sober house, you kind of go by the size of the house, and then you give everybody like 100 square foot living space within the house. So let's just say if they have their bed.
I'm going to have to cut you off there because
Sure.
we're well over our
Oh,
time.
I'm sorry. Okay.
And we'll be taking this up at that time. But
Yeah, I just wanted to give you guys as much information as you could so that I could, to make sure we're viewing this correctly when it's time to.
I appreciate that
So,
insight. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Thanks
appreciate
for
the
being here
time.
tonight, and sorry it wasn't on the agenda.
That's okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak tonight on an item not on tonight's agenda? All right. Seeing no one, then we'll proceed with the rest of the agenda. Next on our agenda, we have some recognitions and donations as a category. Specifically, we've got a proclamation related to Indigenous Peoples Day, and then also recognition of some firefighters, a life-saving award. So we'll start with the proclamation, which is item 5A on the agenda, and I'll read the proclamation, and then a motion from the council would be in order. The proclamation reads, "Whereas for longer than any other people, Indigenous nations have lived upon the land where our nation and the city of Roseville now stand. And whereas Indigenous people have always made enduring contributions to all of our communities through knowledge, experience, technology, science, arts, and culture. And whereas American Indian people today face significant disparities that impact their safety, health, well-being, education, vitality, and cultural preservation. And the city of Roseville understands that in order to help combat these disparities, government entities, organizations, and other public institutions should change their policies and practices to better reflect the experiences of American Indian people and uplift our country's Indigenous roots, history, and contributions. And whereas the idea of Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to the United Nations-sponsored International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas, and whereas in 1990, representatives from 120 Indigenous nations at the First Continental Conference on 500 Years of Indian Resistance unanimously passed a resolution to transform Columbus Day into an occasion to strengthen the process of continental unity and struggle towards liberation, and thereby use the occasion to reveal a more accurate historical record. And whereas the Twin Cities community has a strong history of over 4 decades of American Indian activism, which the city celebrates and honors, now therefore be resolved, the city of Roseville hereby declares Indigenous Peoples Day on October 9th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Etten, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that proclamation is approved. Next on our agenda, under recognitions and donations, we do have a recognition related to life-saving in our fire department. I'll turn it over to Chief Brosnahan to introduce this item this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing us a few minutes to talk through a pretty amazing life-saving opportunity that we had, and we knew that with this certain situation, we had to take advantage of the opportunity to recognize the firefighters involved. We perform life-saving procedures on a regular basis, but every once in a while, a particular call kind of bubbles up to the top just because of the nuance, the timing, the circumstances, and everything that's involved with the incident. And just this happens to just be one of those. So if you're okay with it, I'd like to give just a brief overview kind of the incident, what happened, and kind of what transpired, and then recognize the firefighters that were involved. On Sunday, August 27th at approximately 3 p.m., the Roseville Fire Department was dispatched to 2755 Rice Street for a reported 1-year-old with difficulty breathing. While en route to the call, dispatch updated Medic 610 the patient was now in cardiac arrest and additional resources were being dispatched. Medic 610 arrived on scene in a matter of a few minutes. The 20-month-old patient was in their father's arms out front of the apartment building, unconscious and not breathing. The father handed the patient to first responders. Roseville firefighter Dave Dussault quickly checked for a pulse. Feeling no pulse, pediatric CPR was immediately initiated on the child. Firefighter paramedic Brian Smith immediately began to administer advanced life support medical care, including an advanced airway to supply oxygen for the child. Additional Roseville resources arrived, including all the on-duty staffing, as well as an ambulance and an additional crew from the Maplewood Fire Department. The additional resources were able to complete all the appropriate and necessary advanced life support medical interventions for the child. Moments after these interventions were completed, the child's pulse returned and they began to breathe on their own. Roseville firefighter Dave Dussault transported with the Maplewood Fire Department ambulance to the emergency department at St. Paul Children's Hospital. The child has subsequently been discharged from the hospital and is expected to make a full recovery from this medical emergency with no medical or neurological deficits whatsoever. Due to the rapid response, immediate life support interventions by Roseville firefighters, and the coordinated patient care transfer between Roseville and Maplewood Fire Department staff, the patient was able to have a positive outcome from this critical emergency. This is truly the definition of saving a life. Imagine yourself, even myself, those that have kids, nephews, nieces, carrying a lifeless child and immediately handing it over to a stranger in uniform. This is what it's all about. So with that, I'd like to read off and recognize the firefighters involved and then have the mayor assist me in handing out their certifications. So from the Roseville Fire Department, firefighter EMT Dave Dussault, firefighter paramedic Brian Smith, firefighter paramedic Zach Rickman, firefighter EMT Gerard Henderson, firefighter Fire Inspector Chris Dubé, and Lieutenant Paramedic Cody Thornburg. And from the Maplewood Fire Department, Captain TJ DeBruzzi, firefighter paramedic Tanner Cook, firefighter paramedic Eric Zappa, firefighter EMT Nathan Beitler, and firefighter EMT Ryan Hang. Okay. If you don't mind coming down here. All right, let's do. All right, so Captain TJ DeBruzzi. Ryan Hay. Firefighter Nathan Beitler? That's you. All right. And the folks from Maplewood Fire, firefighter David
Come on
Rousseau.
up. We'll sit back there. Come on up.
Firefighter EMT Chris Dubé. Lieutenant Paramedic Cody Thornburg. Firefighter Paramedic Brian Smith. Firefighter Paramedic Zach Rickman. And firefighter EMT Gerard Henderson. Yeah, that's the.
Now, can we go ahead? Let's do golf.
I don't really.
We'll get a-
We're coming down. All right. My goodness.
I'll just stand behind and, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, only on you though, Mayor.
Yeah, I gotta go that side a little bit. Yeah, I gotta center on the rolls.
I'm short, so I really. Yeah, really, it's a pretty short camera.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful story. I know, now we all have to go back. Work together.
I know.
I'm shedding.
And you're all welcome to stay for the budget discussion, too. What? Aw.
They just want to be sure the fire department.
But congratulations again to everybody involved in that heroic life-saving effort, and we're glad to hear that the patient is doing well and looks to have a full recovery. That's a testament to the professionalism and training and good work of everybody involved.
Absolutely.
With that, then we'll move on to our business items. We just have a couple of business items this evening, but just probably doesn't do it justice. One of the major things we do each year is pass a budget for the following year, and that's one of the steps of that this evening is to adopt a preliminary tax levy and budget for 2024 at this meeting or by the end of September, and then certify that to Ramsey County, which will go out then on the notices to all the taxpayers in the community, which will then inform folks related to our, what used to be known as the Truth in Taxation, now is kind of known as the budget hearing in November, late November. So with that, I will turn it over to City Manager
Mayor.
Pat Trudgeon.
Should we address the item removed from consent agenda?
Oh, my goodness, yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you for catching that. I was so excited about the budget, I forgot about the other item. So, items removed from consent agenda. This would be item 10G, which is to approve a street name change policy, and I'll turn over to Mr. Trudgeon to introduce that, and I see we have our Public Works Director, Jesse Fryhammer, coming up as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 10G approves the city's name, street name change policy that will lay out the process for residents to petition the city for name change of a city street. This is something that was brought to you before as part of the joint meeting of the PWET, and this is being brought back based on some of that discussion. Councilmember Etten asked for it to be pulled from the agenda. We had some conversations earlier today, and I would mention I had Jesse Fryhammer here to answer any specific questions. We also have a bench handout that would show maybe some additional language for some community involvement, and we just put that together for discussion purposes. Not sure if that does what Councilmember Etten was concerned about, but so we're here to talk about that and certainly answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And since Councilmember Etten had asked this to be removed for separate consideration, I'll recognize Councilmember Etten for any questions or comments or.
Thank you. The reason I asked for this to be pulled is in our discussion this summer with the PWET Commission, I brought up, and some other people concurred at least at some level, that we might consider making this a two-step process. The first step process would be people in the neighborhood at a 50% or greater agree to change the name, and then there be a separate clear process for changing the name. First is this process, which at the top of the petition would say, hey, here's the current name and here's the new name. This does provide some direction for what can be part of the naming convention, but I feel like similar to what we did recently with Kaya Park is as a community asset that we should be thoughtful in how we create and come up with that name. That may be too much, I don't know. I do appreciate the changes at the bottom of the first page here around the public notice, kind of specifying who was going to get that. That was something else I had marked here. So I think that language is good and helps clear up who's going to get that notice one way or the other about the name change. But that's my thought. So I don't know where other people are at, but I don't feel great about, hey, someone starts a petition, they come up with their own name on their own. It's the people sign it. So.
Oh, okay. Other thoughts from council members in relation to that matter? I tend to remember that we had talked about it being a two-step process, but didn't appear that way in the minutes, and so I'm not 100% sure where we kind of came down as a council, so I think this is a great opportunity to have some more conversation about that.
So
Thoughts
if it
from the
was a
council?
two-step process, what would be the first step?
First step is wanting to change the name, as I understand it.
Yes.
Correct
How
me
would
if I'm
that be
wrong.
decided?
And then, well, that would be, I think the residents would still have to band together in their neighborhood and figure that out, and then probably still do a petition for a name change.
Okay.
And then I'm presuming that the second step would be the input process to develop what the name change should be.
Yes. Yeah, we would take this petition form and take off the section says to the new name, right? So you start with that petition is around, are we going to change this road name? You can starts getting even dicier with how many people should be part of that, but certainly the people whose street name on their address would change should be the primary people on that. But again, as a public asset, it's not just like, hey, we don't kind of like our, if you're on a cul-de-sac, everyone's just going to change it. I don't know, it just seems odd that it would be just as clear as 51% of people sign it and there it is. So I'm
Well, I
open to
think-
thoughts.
And certainly there is a process besides just if you have 51% of the people sign the petition, it's automatic. I think the process is laid out here right now, which would involve city staff conferring with other entities and things like that. I
Yes.
think that the piece that I believe you're seeking, Councilmember Etten, is more public involvement in the actual selection of the name.
Yes. The vetting of the name,
right.
selection and or vetting of the name.
Does that help, Councilmember Groff?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, so it's more like the park renaming. that
Yes.
time. Although that did take a long time, but people were pleased in the end, so that's the plus.
Other thoughts from council members? Councilmember Strawn?
Thank you. As I was gone during the initial consideration of this, I would just like to know, and this is somewhat on process A, it says a member of the public requesting a name change must contact the city engineer to discuss. Could there be some elaboration on what that means? I mean, what is, Hi, Jesse, how are you? Mr. Fryhammer, what would we be discussing there, and would everyone automatically have the opportunity to go on to be at their own discretion?
So originally that was just a suggestion, but the commission did recommend that we make that a requirement. Their thought was to get the emphasis to really the next details, A through F, those items to make sure, hey, there's no chance that this road does not qualify as a name change. We don't think most roads in Roseville would qualify based on the county's kind of grid system. You're not going to be able to change something off the grid, all of a sudden it becomes Main Street. We think the only few opportunities here are going to be former county roads that are still called county roads, like County Road B, maybe County Road C2, stuff like that. But most of the rest of the system is on a grid. So you're not going to be able to just break up 2 blocks of that grid and call it something different. So that was the main point of having that step in there, was don't have someone waste their time gathering 100 petitions and the county's going to deny it, saying, nope, that's it. So as most plats get developed, they get reviewed at the county, and usually they're put on that grid, so there's usually not a lot of naming opportunity for developers when they do the plat.
With that in mind, would it be possible to add that information into A in the process? Just say, with the city engineer, the considerations will be such, if all of these are met, then B could be possible? I just think maybe that would provide, that does not speak to Councilmember Etton's concern, but at least it would maybe be a flow chart that says if A does not meet these qualifications, then there is no B or E or F or D.
Yeah, certainly, you could add language such as, at the end of the sentence, contact the city engineer to discuss the requirements of the process, or something along those lines to.
I do think helping, adding what the considerations are, though, are helpful for people to know that it's not just, if I call you enough times, you will change your mind.
Well, I think that provides the opportunity for the city engineer then to outline what those requirements are, which are listed in the policy.
Right.
But perhaps those requirements could be moved up to.
They certainly could be, yeah, I see what the point there is, yeah. Well, and I just wanted to clarify too with the engineer, I don't mean to hijack the conversation either, but the county approves the names of all city streets within the county road system?
So since the county does the addressing, they have to have some say in reviewing the address. And same thing, we can't, if we change a name that maybe White Bear Lake has, and there could potentially be conflict there, so there does have to be enough difference in the names. White Bear is probably a bad example because they're not west, but New Brighton or someone else on the western part, we don't want to make sure there's a conflict with addressing. So the county it has to be in the process.
So it's not necessarily County Public Works saying we don't want to rename County Road B for 5 miles. It's the county wants to make sure that all the names of streets throughout the system
Are consistent.
and don't have conflicts.
Yep.
And is that Public Works that does that, or?
I don't know if it's Public Works. It might be through their community development. Whoever we send our name change
Sure,
stuff
sure,
to.
sure. Got it. No, I just wanted to understand that. Thank you for clarifying that for the council. Councilmember Redden, did you want to follow up or? had thoughts?
Just on this thought, I appreciated that the PWET Commission, Public Works Commission, asked for A to B where it is. And I think that for me, it's really to discuss the whole process, not just whether they can change the name based on Section B, but also there are several other steps here. So making sure people are thoroughly understanding. This is not a casual activity, right? They're not applying for a dog license here, right? And so it is a fairly rigorous process, even here, even if I don't feel like it's quite in the, like I'd like to separate it. It's either way, it's still a fairly rigorous process with several steps and things like that. So I think that's an important piece. I'm not sure I would need to change A, but I'd be open to little changes, I guess.
Does the proposed language get to your concern about having that more involved process to develop the name, or do we need to enhance the policy further to include that?
It does not. What it does, that additional language that is shown up today in D, the public notice piece, I think is much better fleshed out here, and I appreciate the specificity of the distance and the timing for the notification process. I think that's good. What I would be doing is cutting off at, again, after the petition, then we start going through, almost partway through B, what can be named, and then having the community put in name options, and then you have this public notice after it's sorted through. I understand it's gonna take a long time, people may not be interested in that, but
Well, I think that the challenge may become is if we have a cul-de-sac that has a unique name in the city that's not shared with other streets, and there's 5 homes on it, well, first of all, do we need to notice people within 1,000 feet of it? I
Yeah.
guess would be one question, but then the other question is, do we need a process involving,
lots of
a
people.
lot of people that don't live on the street either?
Right.
So
So I think
there's-
they would get ixnayed by other items in B, right? That was my example before, right? But what I don't want this to be is that a few people get together and they create a new name. Yes, it's got all these rules, whatever, but I just find that to be unusual for a city asset.
Councilmember
Well,
Dunn.
I think also the city asset part, but also for the people who live on that street, because it is an expense and a time for them too, because they have to change all of their mailing addresses and their charge cards and their, whatever they have. So that's the only thing I've heard up about County Road B in my neighborhood. So someone brought that up at one of the night events.
Well, and certainly the petition gets through the threshold of is there enough interest in even making a name change? Because
Yep.
if you can't even get enough people to sign a petition to change the name,
Yep.
then that's going to kind of end the process right
Right.
there.
Yeah, it's true.
So then you don't even have
So
to
that would
necessarily
take care
think
of
of a name. Maybe there can be some kind of parameter around like the number of impacted properties as to whether or not it's as complex of a process, or can we outline a generic process that kind of covers both situations, like a County Road B west of Cleveland, which is clearly lots and lots and lots of properties versus a
major
smaller
collector route.
situation. Right, exactly.
For that neighborhood, west of
Right.
Cleveland, it's only in and out of there.
Right, right. Councilmember Strawn.
I would just like to assert, I think it's helpful to have, I think we should have a policy, because there are times when more information is known about, maybe, we don't have a lot of streets that are named in honor of someone, but if there's more information found out about someone who previously had a street or a lake or a parkway named after them, and it becomes apparent that that no longer fulfills our even our diversity, equity, and inclusion goals as a city, I think it's important that we have an opportunity and a pattern by which people can approach this and go forward. So I think it's important that we have a process. So while this may not be perfect, what everyone wants, and I think we should work to improve it, but I think we need something in place, because there just are times when it comes up that roads need to change.
Perhaps instead of trying to develop a process this evening, it might make sense to refer this, either to staff and/or to the commission again for further thought on what a process might look like and how we can incorporate that into the policy. Does that make sense?
Sure. And if they end up feeling that that's just crazy land, then I'll be quiet.
Then they can make that recommendation to the council.
Yeah. Gently.
Well, and I definitely, once again, I think I do have a little bit of concern about the 1,000-foot notification distance for a relatively small street that doesn't have that many properties on it. That seems a bit excessive, so maybe that has to be tweaked as well. But I think the thought's in the right place, because certainly County Road B west of Cleveland might be an example where that 1,000-foot notice might make some sense. So,
Yes.
we may want to just kind of work on and tweak what that looks like too. So, do you think the council, do you think that provides enough guidance to the staff and commission going forward to?
I would ask the staff. Mr. Fryhammer?
So just one concern we had when we discussed this was if we meet, we determine how to come up with names, and we vote. This is different in the sense we're asking for a change on a road that has a name, unlike maybe a new park. So this is initiated. One of the nice things is if they have a name and chart, when they determine it, the residents know what they're asking for. If they petition for it, yes, I want my name changed, but then the name goes to something they don't want, do we go backwards? And then same thing, if we come up with a name, then we go to the county, and the county says, no, I don't want this, then we go backwards. So it's kind of it might be a little circular loop. We can do that, it just might be really complex. I don't think it's gonna come up often, so maybe it's not a big deal, but it's a little different process than the park, because there is a name and certain, they're certain residents are directly affected by it.
It seems to be a process could be designed that works with the public, to try to develop a name that has some consensus and check it with the county before it comes to the point of adopting something to change it, because certainly we don't want to get to that point and then find out the county says no. So I think it would seem that if some of that can happen sort of before it gets to sort of a final approval phase.
Yeah, we can basically create item C after B with an engagement process, and then, mimic that, similar to what I guess Parks does with the park engagement. That process might be a little more iterative depending upon how we go with the county, but we can figure some language out that would make that work.
Councilmember Haddon.
Think it through, see what your commission thinks, bring it back to us, and if you say, Jason, this is a terrible idea, again, I'll be quiet.
And a good point is that one of the steps in the park naming process is that the Parks and Rec Commission
Reviews and
takes a look at it and makes their recommendation to the council.
Yep.
So that might
Yep.
make sense to look at for the Public Works, Environment and Transportation Commission to then sort of be a vetting step, hopefully after the county has already decided it's good or bad, and then, make a recommendation to the council.
But they actually got options, the Park and Rec Commission got options when we changed the name, and then discussed and came, right, so it wasn't a singular thing, but options.
Well, it's just thinking out loud here.
Okay.
We don't know what the
You're
final
good.
answer will be. Councilmember Schroeder.
I do think the people on the street should have, I guess in a way, more skin in the game for the name. And I like the idea of letting the public know about it. In a way, I'd almost say that if you're more than 1,000, feet or whatever, I think you'd almost come in and have veto power versus coming in and saying, no, I wanted to call it, tree instead of lake, so, I would be cautious that we would open it up for the whole public to be able to,
Yeah, who gets to vote on this in the end when
Yeah.
it affects
yes.
your address that you're changing?
Yes.
and
I think the
your
votes
whatever.
go in line with the people who are eligible to sign the petition,
Yes,
basically.
and that's, I wanted to get,
If you can sign the petition, then you have a say in the name.
but if someone in the public should know what's happening and then be able to say, this is my objection,
Right.
maybe?
Excuse me, I was just going to say that there's really no process for the residents to vote. It's
Yep.
the council voting.
Well, yeah.
It's initiated by
Right.
petition.
Maybe the better way to say it is input into the,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know what.
And that'd be at the front end, to get it started, at least how it's drafted right now. So ultimately, it would be up to the council, maybe based on PWET's recommendation.
well, that's if you take off that name part too, then how do you, yeah, that's where I'm struggling with, is at what point do you introduce the name that they'd like to change it to?
I think conceivably, somebody could include a name on their petition with the understanding that that may or may not be the final name, I suppose. Councilmember Strawn.
Couple things come to mind. One is that particular part of County Road B may include a large apartment building. So who, and even if that one isn't specifically, it could come up at another time. So who has the input, the owner of the building or those who reside there? And do you have to go with 51% of the people who reside in that apartment building? And then other locations could include businesses, and they may or may not reside within Roseville. They clearly don't, hopefully they don't live in their business, but we don't always know. So what is their access and interest in that? And do they have to, a long-term tenant of a building may have a vested interest in keeping the address the same, but they don't actually own it. So I think we have, there's a lot of, yes, we notice people, but how, if we're saying there's a voting or some kind of input, we're really opening a can of worms unless we really specify what we're seeking here.
Right, and so clearly, first of all, to wouldn't be voting on the name necessarily. I went a step too far there. The petition right now is set up for property owners, which is pretty typical in our processes because they have, they have the rights for the property, and I don't know that we would want to necessarily change that in terms of the petition side of it, but in terms of who can suggest names or whatever can be involved in the process. I think that certainly, residents of multifamily, or, I'm not sure about employees of businesses necessarily, but owners of businesses can have a say in it too, especially if it's a commercial street. Should we kind of let it go back and be thought about for a while and
Let it
not once
percolate?
again try not to decide everything this evening?
See if that's clearer or
That's clear as
less
mud.
clear.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the process
Where
will
we talked
involve
a while ago.
thinking about what the issues are with any
Yes.
process
Yes,
and
exactly.
kind of vetting it and determining what makes sense or what doesn't make sense and why, and then a great recommendation will come back to the council and we'll all be supportive of it. More or less.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan.
All right, so no action on that item this evening then, other than to refer it back for further consideration. That then brings us to our business items. Thank you, everyone, for that reminder of that item. First item, once again, under business items is 7A, which is the consideration of the 2024 budget and tax levy. And turn over now to Mr. Trudgeon and Ms. Petrick, our finance director, for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, we're here tonight to consider by the council to adopt the preliminary levy, tax levy for the city levy, the EDA levy. There's also a debt levy resolution we need to have, as well as the budget. As mentioned, this is the preliminary levy. This is required under state law by the end of September that cities do pass a preliminary levy. Obviously, the next steps after this is to continue to take a look at the levy and the budget. And with the adoption of a preliminary levy, you can lower that levy and/or budget, but you can't raise it. So just to make very clear what we're doing here tonight, I think you're all familiar, but it's more for the public so that they can track here. As I mentioned, we'd also be talking about the EDA levy as well. So in particular, with this budget, I did present my budget recommendation and tax levy on August 21st. And that recommended tax levy was $28,785,280, or an increase of $2.3 million, or a percentage increase of about 9%. Our budget itself is $69,637,000, and that is also an increase from last year. I'll ask Ms. Petrick to put up a table of the impact. I have a paper copy. This is in the staff report. We did add just some additional information to hopefully make it a little bit clearer. If we could have the camera, mic in the control room, or the laptop, I mean. Well, you have it in front of us. We'll try to get that displayed on the laptop. So as we can see here, under the proposed budget that I did in August, the total increase for the property tax levy for the median valued home, which is $349,900, would be $7.98 per month. And the EDA levy that we're proposing to do is actually a slight reduction, about 16 cents a month. So for a total of the city and EDA levy of $7.82 increase per month for the median valued home, which would be a total of $93.84 over the period of time. There we go. There's up there. So you can see how this compares to 2023 to 2024 about what the median valued home. Obviously, each year the median value does change, so it's not like for like in the sense of, the value, but what we declare as a median value, or the county declares as a median value, and what we use as our benchmark. That's the difference year to year. Would also know at the bottom of this table here, we just broke down the impact from the value increase versus the budget increase for the median value at home to get to that $93.84. So every year is a factor of the value goes up in a property as well as the budget increase here. So just to break that down. It's still all real dollars that people are paying, so maybe in the end it doesn't matter where it's coming from. It is an increase, but just wanted to provide that additional information there.
Just a question on that. So this information is including the change in value of the property, the median property?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Yep, yep.
from last year's median
Yeah,
value
from,
to this
yeah,
year's, okay.
Yep, yep, yep.
So that's, that seemed to be a little different than the answer to a question I got earlier today on the information in the packet, which said it was static for each of the values listed. There was no value change in the comparison of the numbers, unless I'm mistaken.
Attachment 8 also has value changes.
It does have a value change?
Yes.
Okay, so did we, for each of the values of the residential properties, did we just assume that the change in value was the average change for all of them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Mr. Trudgeon.
So these impacts, actually, when I presented on August 21st, we didn't have the final numbers, so I did follow up with the council on some of these impacts, but this is really unchanged from my original recommendation here from August, so I just wanted to lay out the impacts on that. As I mentioned, we have an EDA levy too that's going down slightly. The city council did consider that at a previous meeting as the EDA and made the recommendation to the city council to lower that levy slightly. As I mentioned to you, I think at the last meeting and in other communications, one of the biggest cost drivers for this budget and levy is the implementation of the classification and compensation study. I'm getting real close to having some numbers there. I just don't have those available to me tonight to really say with any certainty on what we can maybe look at that would cost as far as options, and if there would be any ability to lower the levy and the budget as part of that. I would note on October 9th, which is our next meeting, we'll have a full presentation, and those costs will be there, so we'll get this pretty soon. As you know, we have the opportunity in the fall to continue to work through that, and the final decision won't be made until the December 4th meeting. And I really do hope we can find some room in there to make some adjustments in there, but until we get that full picture, I'm not able to really provide you any guidance in that. So I apologize for that, and hopefully you can have some patience to just wait till we get the additional information, and then we can make a better informed decision on there. I know there might be a lot of specific questions on the budget. I just wanted to give a quick overview of it, and I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
All right, just to clarify too, we've got 4 requested actions, 4
Yes.
resolutions. One is to set the budget, and that's the total budget, fee and tax supported. One is to set the tax levy, to support the tax supported part of it. One is an adjustment to our levy as it relates to bonded debt, because we are changing how much we're spending on paying back debt, because I think some of the debt has been paid off. That's 3, and then 4 is the EDA.
EDA
you
levy.
mentioned.
Yep,
Yep,
you got
okay.
it.
Boy, that was pretty good off the top of my head. All right,
like you've done this before.
council questions for staff on the proposed budget and tax levy. All right. Councilman Bratton.
I would just note that I had several questions, and I appreciate all the follow-through and information I was provided today. I'll have some more things as time goes on there, but I appreciated all of that, so thanks.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, again, thank you very much. I had quite a few questions going back and forth, and I appreciate everyone getting back to me in a timely manner on that as well. There's a lot of detail here, and I know there's going to be a number of other questions still coming, so.
Okay, great.
This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the proposed budget and tax levy too. It does not appear that we have any members of the public with us in the audience this evening. I'm presuming we still don't have any remote participants. All right. And once again, this action is to sort of set the upper limit for the tax levy, and then we can adjust downward before the end of the year, before it's finally certified to the county for collection, but we can't go up except for emergency circumstances. So, and as Mr. Trudgeon outlined in his presentation, both tonight and in prior presentations, a significant portion of the proposed change is related to that sort of not quite yet fully known picture related to the classification and compensation adjustments for staff based on the study that was done in order to get our staff compensation levels across the organization in line with the marketplace. So it's, I think it puts us in a little bit different position this year maybe than in prior years, in the sense that we don't have a lot to necessarily carve out at this point of the process, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because we do have more steps to come. With that, I don't know which resolution the council might want to take up first if we're prepared to take action at this point. Usually, the order seems to make sense with budget, tax levy, debt levy, and EDA, but we can do it any way you want to. Because they all get sent on to other people. Councilmember Hatton.
I'll move attachment 3, which is the preliminary annual budget for 2024.
Second.
All right, so the first motion then is, I'm going to make space for all this. Councilmember Etten moves and Councilmember Strawn seconds attachment 3, which is the budget resolution setting the 2024 budget in the amount of $69,637,928, of which $41,544,060 is designated for the property tax supported programs. Discussion on the motion. As the maker of the motion, Councilmember Hatton.
I feel like we're in a little bit of limbo here. We've already actually made some progress on some things. But I'm comfortable with saying, hey, we're going to do this for now. So that's all I have to say.
All right, Councilmember Strawn.
More of that is just, this is our we will not exceed this. Don't foresee we have any unforeseen situations, but those come up without notice.
Sure. Other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Schroeder.
Yeah, it's hard because we don't have all the detail and the pieces on this, but I will say I'm a bit uncomfortable with the percentage of how much this is going up, and so I am confident that we can find a way to make this a smaller number.
Other discussion on the motion?
Well, as it
Councilman
was said, it's a not to exceed, so as more information comes in, we may be able to make adjustments. We do have, if I remember correctly, contracts that are union contracts that are coming in too, so. That's correct. I don't know if those will all be in a timely way, but we'll have to address them as they come in.
And I think, Mr. Trudgeon, you have attempted to account for that as best you can in the proposed budget.
Yes, the best you can in
Right,
estimate
right,
without
yes,
any firm
yes.
numbers. But that will be a process that will continue to move forward, and it's not atypical as we head into the budget cycle, but it's the class and comp for the non-union that's the big number that I'm really trying to get my arms around.
Right.
And just on a technical matter, this motion is for the resolution on the budget, and the state doesn't limit you from increasing the budget. You just can't increase the tax levy. So you could spend more, but you would just have to find other ways to pay for it besides the tax levy.
Let's not
So
do that.
just to be totally clear about that.
A grant.
So, right, so with that then, and obviously there are certain limited emergency circumstances, we can also increase both the levy and the budget, but I don't know that, I can't remember anybody having encountered those in my time in this world. With that, we've got the motion before us, once again, attachment 3, which is the resolution to set the city budget for 2024 at that 69 million and change figure. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Our preliminary budget for 2024 is set. How about a resolution related to the tax levy for the city?
So moved.
Second.
All right, that would be attachment 1. And that's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, second by Councilmember Groff. Discussion on the motion, Councilmember Strawn.
Nothing further.
All right, Councilmember Groff?
No, as we said, we'll wait and see what happens down the road, but this is the best we can do tonight.
Right, and to be clear, this is the one that we can't exceed.
Yeah.
So this is the not to exceed for the tax levy for 2024. And is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. The tax levy is preliminarily set. Next resolution, I believe it's attachment 2, related to the bonded debt levy.
I'll move that, Mayor.
Second.
Councilmember Groff moves, Councilmember Schroeder seconds, approving attachment 2, the resolution setting the, or communicating to Ramsey County the bonded debt levy for 2024 as outlined. Discussion on that motion, the maker of the motion? Usually
Is
there's
there
no
really
discussion.
nothing
So, right.
I need to add to that?
Yeah, this is really just technically adjusting the
Technically
amounts
adjusting,
based
yeah.
on
Pretty straightforward.
what we are paying in debt service this year. All right. There's no discussion. We've got the motion before us for attachment 2 resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And finally, the attachment 4 resolution setting the EDA levy for 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, second by Councilmember Bratton to approve the resolution attachment 4 setting the EDA levy for 2024 in the amount of, where did it go here? $378,235. Discussion on that motion? I think we've talked quite a bit about the EDA over the last several meetings. Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, I would, since we talked about it last time and it came to light how large the fund balance is for this, for the EDA of over $464,000, and that I think the budget is also very healthy, I would expect that we could do a haircut on this one because of the amount of cash that's already in there. So I would expect us to, this would be one area where we could possibly even have a bigger deduction in the levy. So that's just my thought.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously as well. The EDA levy will be communicated to the county as well. Just a last check-in with council members as we go into the next steps of the process. First of all, we should note, I think one of the next items is to look at utility rates and fees as well as our fee schedule. So those two items will be coming up probably in October or November timeframe.
November 6th.
November. And then, once again, the city will have a hearing on the budget and tax levy at our November 27th meeting. Thank you. And this is working well. And then December 5th,
December 4th.
4th will be, I heard two different numbers, will be actually setting the budget. All of those are opportunities for members of the public to weigh in. Certainly, you don't have to do it at a meeting either. We always will accept communications via email, telephone, semaphore, whatever you need to get your word to us on the budget. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to staff for all the hard work on this, and I know Mr. Trudgeon and Ms. Petrick have especially worked hard on this over the last several months. Some accountants are busy in April. City accountants are busy this time of year. All right. That then brings us to our second business item, item 7B, which is to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 507 to update references to marijuana and establishing new Chapter 513 related to smoking and vaping in specified city properties. I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon again for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, we're here to talk about some changes to the code regarding references to marijuana and also regarding the prohibition of smoking and vaping at specified city properties. In the staff report, I go kind of over the history here of us talking about it in a couple of meetings. At the last city council meeting, we discussed this. We narrowed down the discussion as far as the use of cannabis in smoke form to city properties, not the general public. We also brought in a discussion about smoking of tobacco and vaping of tobacco in those same spaces. So what is in front of you tonight is an ordinance that would prohibit the use of smoking of and vaping of cannabis and tobacco in city-specified properties. And those are all city parks, parking lots adjacent to city parks, and trails within city parks, and on the main city campus, including City Hall, the fire station, maintenance facility, Roseville Skating Center, and adjacent parking lots, and the License Center, strip mall, and adjacent parking lot. That's what's defined as the city-specified properties, and the use of those materials would not be allowed through smoking or vaping on those properties. So pretty straightforward as far as specifying what it is and where it is, I should say. If you recall, originally it was drafted much more wider in other places, but this really focuses on city type of property. Would also mention at the front end of the ordinance is some removal of references that have been in the code for quite a long time in relation to the new state law and some strikeouts there. And City Attorney Tierney had brought that forward earlier. I don't think there's some questions, I think, maybe on what some of those things were, but making sure that we clean that up to make sure it's consistent with state law, and certainly if there's any questions on that, City Attorney Tierney can answer those. But that's what's in front of you. We do have the actual ordinance, and then also an ordinance summary for your consideration.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions for staff or the attorney on the proposed ordinance? And just to clarify, we did provide the necessary statutory notice to the public so that we are okay with passing an
Website,
ordinance
yep.
this evening, right? Okay, great. All right, once again, any questions? All right, we'll check if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak to this item, and seeing we don't have anybody from the public participating in person this evening, presume that is the case that we don't have anybody to speak on this. That brings us to then council consideration. Councilmember Atten.
I'd like to move the ordinance. And
I would
The packet.
second it.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Atten, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Atten as the maker of the motion.
I appreciate the changes that were made. I think this gets after our clearest areas where we are meeting the state law and ensuring the health of our residents at the same time, and look forward to a further process with engaging the public a little bit more on the potential for other areas in the future.
Right, and as the seconder, Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, I would concur. I think it's a good idea that we get something in place, and I think this is a good start, knowing that we will continue to have the conversation as we move forward.
Other discussion on the motion?
No, nothing for me.
I appreciate Councilmember Atten mentioning, and Councilmember Schroeder, the other process or the additional process that'll happen after this, and certainly one of those outcomes could be changes to what we've just enacted or will be enacting this evening, provided that that's what the input from the public tells us and makes sense to the community. That being said, we've got the motion before us to adopt the ordinance as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that ordinance is adopted. Next, we have consideration of a summary of the ordinance. This is an opportunity to direct staff to publish a summary in our official publication rather than the entire ordinance. By state statute, a ordinance summary motion must receive a supermajority, which in this case is 4/5. Is there a motion to approve publishing a summary?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Strawn, to approve publishing a summary. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, meeting the supermajority requirement, and the ordinance summary will be published rather than the full ordinance. That then brings us to consideration of city council minutes. We've got one set of minutes before us this evening, which is our minutes from the September 11th council meeting. Council members had a chance to weigh in on those prior to the meeting, and the updated draft has been provided to the council with the changes as requested by council members. Are there any other changes or additions or adjustments to the minutes, or a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Atten, to approve the minutes from our September 11th meeting as presented to the council. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right. Are there going to be any abstentions, or were we all there for that one? All right. With that, we've got the motion before us to approve those minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those minutes are approved. That brings us to the consent agenda, with the exception of item G, which was taken up earlier. Mr. Trudgeon, would you summarize the remaining items on the consent agenda for the council?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 10A approves payments in the amount of $1,142,588.47. Agenda item 10B approves one temporary liquor license, one THC retail license, and one massage therapy establishment license. Item 10C adopts a resolution accepting public improvements related to the Lexington Plaza project agreement. Item 10D accepts a quote from Pipe Services Corporation for the televising of city sanitary and stormwater lines in the amount of $100,797.45. Item 10E approves entering into a construction cooperation agreement with the City of Arden Hills for improvements to the Hamlin Avenue water main. And then finally, item 10F adopts a resolution accepting public improvements related to the Midland Legacy Estates 3rd edition.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there any questions for staff on the items on the consent agenda? Otherwise, a motion to approve would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Atten, to approve the consent items A through F. Any discussion on that motion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and we have approved those consent items. That brings us then to the future agenda review, communications, announcements, and council reports, or future agenda items from council members. Mr. Trudgeon, would you first give us an update on the upcoming agendas?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next meeting is October 9th. I've alluded to this before, but we have a lot of liquor compliance and tobacco compliance failures to be taken up. I think that is 8 liquor compliance failures. A couple of those are second and maybe even 1/3 violation, or that might be tobacco, I can't remember which one now. But we'll have a series of cases, and you'll consider each of these individually. As you know, we have presumptive penalties in there, but it's an opportunity for you to make that official determination. So I know police department staff are working hard to get all the appropriate paperwork, including the training records from the various businesses, so it's been a lot of work on their part, but this is a lot, and this is something that I think we'll have to continue to talk about how to make sure we have better compliance. Then after that, the only other main item we have is the classification and compensation study, which we've talked about already tonight, and we'll have the full presentation there and have a better sense of what that looks like. The following week, we do have a work session format of a meeting. We'll have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. They'll come forward and start talking about what they've been working on and things that they would like to work on. We hope to have an Envision Roseville update. I just saw some emails today. They're still working on finalizing that report, they being the consultant. So we'll try to work towards that. We also want to discuss a couple Park and Rec items, Rose Fest and the upgrades to Rose Brook Park. Then on the 23rd, we have a lot of items here that you've seen before, but one that will take some discussion is certainly the short-term rentals. We want to bring back that whole conversation and talk about what we want to change or not change in the ordinance. The ordinance amendments for sacred settlements and the reasonable accommodation that came up earlier. We do have some plans and specs for some trails, specifically Wagner Path and Tamarack Path. Those are items that have been in our master plan for a little while here and just kind of working through that process. Also, the awarding the bid for Twin Lakes Pathway Project Phase 2. This goes into Oasis Park, all the way from the new development behind Byerly's there. So this is the second phase of that. And what we're hoping to do is approve the classification and compensation plan. We want to give you all that information on the 9th and then consider the implementation options. So we can plan accordingly, for the budget, but also just all the logistics we have to do to get the new system set up. So we want to make sure we have adequate time to do that. So that would be the plan, the 23rd.
And just to clarify on the final plans and specs, that is to authorize going out for generation of the final plans and specs, or is
Yes,
that?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's not to approve the final plans
Yeah,
at
yeah.
that point?
But
Okay.
yeah, this is when we start spending some money and momentum to go in that direction. So we
Gotcha,
wanna-
okay. I appreciate that. I know there's been some questions from the public on
Yep.
at least one of those pathways, so I appreciate that clarification. Other questions for staff on the proposed upcoming agenda for the next several meetings? All right. Any council member initiated items for future meetings? Any announcements, communications, liaison reports? I would just, on behalf of the Communications Commission, want to make a note that they're losing a longtime employee, very valuable employee, Pat Cook. He's leaving 9 North to go to another job in that industry at another local media entity in the Twin Cities. So we certainly appreciate everything that Pat has done for the city of Roseville. I know these council chambers are in a much better place because of a lot of work he's done to get the audio and the video and all of that working properly, and has spent a lot of time with the city of Roseville on that, not to mention being a longtime employee of that organization. I think he actually started working for the cable company before the cable company reverted the access operation to the corporation. So that tells you how long it's been that he's been working there. So Pat will be missed, but certainly they're advertising and trying to fill that position. And I think it sounds like they're getting good applications in for the particular positions they've got open in addition to that one. So hopefully that bodes well for that position as well. So any other liaison reports or announcements? Otherwise, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved?
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Etten to adjourn. No discussion on a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and we are adjourned at 7:09 PM. Thank you, everyone.